So what I wanted to talk about is the idea of 1,000 years of peace. So there's a prophecy that predicts there will be 1,000 years of peace. In order for that to happen, obviously there has to be a day or an hour or a moment of peace. So I'm going to look at it from the standpoint of a singularity, as opposed to stretching it over 2,000 years. Imagine it collapsing to one singular moment and having that moment or that singularity, this singular moment of peace. So different ways to look at this or different titles. You can think of a theory of oneness, a unified field theory, or a universal field theory. In terms of characters, theatrically, you'd be thinking of a Neo, a Jedi, or a Master of the Mystical Arts, for instance. In potentially real life, you'd be talking about a Messiah, a Maitreya, an Avatar of some type. So the one thing I want to point out, though, is imagine you come up with a theory of oneness or a unified or universal field theory where you basically united everything in the universe. So here's the thing is that if there's you and your theory, and if those two things exist as separate, then how could it be a theory of oneness? The very first thing is that you're separate from the actual theory. So what I'm proposing is that for there to be an actual oneness, for there to actually be a unified or universal theory, is that the person who comes up with the theory would actually become the theory. And that's where your character like Neo from the Matrix or again a Jedi, but that's essentially what your Messiah is. So looking at it in terms of consciousness, it's obviously the highest level of consciousness. People talk about enlightenment and different ways to get at it and so forth. What I want to focus more on is how. So imagine there's 8 billion people on the planet right now. And imagine if one person, so one of us, any one of us, is going to come, show up one day and basically save the whole world. So how is this even possible? What would basically be happening is whether you're religious and you're saying heaven and earth coming together, or if you're scientific or atheist, sci-fi, you basically be talking about the multiverse. So our universe and the multiverse coming together. Imagine the colliding of these two worlds. So heaven or the multiverse cannot be quantified. So that's all the things that are eternal, infinite, and timeless. On our side, which is our universe or earth, everything can be counted and quantified, up, down, me, you, left, right, here, there, emotions, feelings, I, me, yours, I. So the I is probably the most, the strongest identity measuring factors basically from the ego. But everything on this side is quantified. So where you have the eternal on the one side, you have the temporary, the temporal on this side. Where you have the infinite, you have the finite. And whether you have the timeless, you now have time. So this is a dimension of time that we're living in. But imagine that coming together now and unifying with the eternal, infinite, and timeless. Because those things can't be quantified or counted, measured, they can only exist through oneness. Because if you had two-ness or something else, you'd be able to count, measure, quantify, it would be separate. So eternal, infinite, and timeless can only be expressed through oneness, which makes our universe and our dimension duality or two-ness, because again, everything is measured and quantified. These two dimensions, worlds, universes, whatever coming together, they would be coming through one single individual. So if you line up 8 billion people right now, pick whoever you want to pick. But imagine that it would basically collapsing to a single point. And again, I look at the Pink Floyd symbol where you have the triangle and the light coming in and then the rainbow. So that would be the divine or that infinite coming actually from this side, I guess. And then hitting through the prism, which would represent time, past, present, and future. Because basically imagine that energy, that oneness, that consciousness is so powerful that it has to be divided into 3 so that we can actually process it and filter it. So you have your past, present, and future. It comes filtered through time, and then there's actually through the ego. So I've talked about this in other videos just really quickly, but if you imagine this being the eternal now, you can call it God, energy, whatever, but imagine this is the eternal now. It taking you time to hear that, it takes you time to see it, and then it takes you time to react emotionally or intellectually. So there's the eternal now. There's you in your dimension of time. There's the eternal now. So you're not necessarily in the now. You're in basically your present moment. And that's basically when you look at this is that your present moment, it's not a moment, it's an experience. So you have your past, present, and future. And then basically the eternal now or the divine or oneness basically filters through that. We're in our dimension of time. When people say, why doesn't God do anything? He can't. And people, well, it's God, he can do anything. But God does not exist within this dimension of time. He is the dimension of time and the entirety of it. But he exists outside of this dimension of time. I wish I actually had the diagram really handy right now. look. Oh, I do. So this is just kind of the mathematical looking at it. I've explained this before. The negative one, positive one. The root of positive one is 1 times 1 equals 1, and the root of negative 1. But the thing is you can't root a negative number. Two negatives equals a positive. So this is called I, the impossible number. So imagine this almost being an equation, and it's all solved for I, which would be I, the ego, or the self. But this being heaven, this would be earth, as above, so below. It's basically a reflection. And that's a key, because anytime you're looking at a reflection, again, you're looking at the opposite. So if I lift my left hand, it should be my left hand lifting in the mirror, but because it's the reflection, you're going to see the opposite. And that's basically almost what it is through the filter of time, we're missing the eternal expression. It's who we are, it's where we come from, but we're missing it in every single moment. And we're making decisions. Basically, everything you see is real, but imagine you're seeing it in a reflection. So in the moment it takes to come back to you, you're actually missing the truth of it. The other way to look at it is again, as if it's in a dream, and one character needs to wake up. Interesting part about this is I'm saying this is the mathematical expression. It's interesting because this would be adding and subtracting. So this is you basically moving through time, your dimension of time. Well, zero doesn't play. So imagine God being zero, like if this is a binary 0 and 1. Obviously he's oneness, but when you die, he's also kind of the zero. He's both. But zero doesn't play. 10 plus 0 is still 10, and 9 plus 0 or minus 0 it's still 9, whatever. But now on the vertical plane, which imagine this being kind of the idea of heaven, someone splicing time, the zero cancels out anything. You can have 10 billion times zero, boom, million, billion, trillion. It doesn't matter how big the number is, even the infinite divided by zero. I'm pretty sure that still goes down to zero. So, but anyway, so God's not within this dimension of time. He's created it. He's surrounding it, everything. And this is the point of the idea of a Messiah. Although there's been many enlightened masters and gurus, and there's also been prophets and many other people that have existed. The idea of one singular person. I know this rubs some people the wrong way, the idea of it being one singular person, because the people who think oneness think it's, all of us, which is true. But if you understand the potential and how powerful this energy is, it only needs to be one of us. Because if it came through one person in the complete kind of story, it wouldn't take anyone else, and everything's over. So the idea of imagine a person showing up, and the prophecy, one prophecy is that thief in the night. So imagine in one day, in one move, takes the whole world. So this is basically, imagine, okay, so it's called the world story. So imagine someone has, well, we all have our individual stories, and there's 8 billion people. Imagine one of us slices time, and instead of their story kind of, even though they've lived it through time, imagine it becomes the world story. And it basically echoes through eternity, and that becomes the prophecy in the building and all through time. And I can kind of go into that story a little bit more. But so I just lost my train of thought, but give me 1 second to get it back. So the idea of timing the Messiah and kind of awakening to it. Okay, so how would this one individual connect these two dimensions? Multiverse in our universe, time with the timeless, the eternal with the thing. So basically that person would almost have to replace time. So when you think of the end of days and people think of the end of the world and all that stuff, it's basically one moment where somebody ends time. So they basically splice time, and that would be the fulfillment of the prophecy where everything comes together. I'm kind of losing my train of thought. There's a point that I wanted to explain. Oh, so the idea of a story. Okay, sorry, let me get back on track. So say I tell a story and it's that I robbed 5 banks yesterday. If that story is fictional, it's not true, then nothing comes of it. But imagine I tell the story and I actually did rob 5 banks yesterday. I would be arrested and put in jail. Okay. Imagine somebody shows up. There's 8 billion people. Imagine somebody shows up and tells the story of being King of Heaven and Earth, the Son of God, Jesus Christ, here to save the entire world, and actually has a way, and it makes sense if somebody actually listens to it. But imagine this person tells a story and it's not true, and it's a fictional story. Then nothing comes of it. And besides maybe wanting to lock them up and put in a mental institution. But what I'm trying to say is, imagine if somebody comes and tells the story, but imagine the story is true. The government, the police, the church, somebody still has to react. The idea that the truth could come out and this actually could happen, and the idea that nobody's actually ready, and the idea of how it would actually happen. So what I wanted you to consider is, in terms of all the superhero movies and this and whatever, imagine this person's superpower is words. That's it. Imagine this person's only ability is, well, it's the word of God. In the beginning, the word created everything. Imagine right now the word being able to fix everything. So imagine this person is just going to come and he's going to tell a story. And that story is going to be the story of time being spliced. And it's going to bring these two worlds together. It's going to unite, everything. All religions, philosophy, math, science, like everything will collapse down to the singularity because it's all oneness. And it's a very simple once you see the kind of almost like the equation, the simplicity of reducing it down to this oneness. But imagine it all like singularity and all collapses down to the singular point. This person would just tell the story. But because the story is true, imagine in one move, somebody takes the entire world. Now, everything that the person would have to explain would have to be the point in time, and then its connecting point from the multiverse or from the eternal aspect of it. So if I said to somebody right now or anyone that, oh, imagine there's going to be a king take over the world, the person's instant reaction is going to be to reject it. But now the secondary point that connects it. Imagine that this is a king's oath. So I didn't come to rule. I came to serve. I didn't come to take power. I came to take responsibility for everything. I'm not here to tell you what to think, what to do, or what to believe. My responsibility isn't to tell you who you are. But imagine this person has one responsibility, and their responsibility is to tell you who they are. And explaining who they are and basically aligning everything, connecting the whole world and collapsing it all down to a singular point for the whole world. That's basically what a Messiah would be. The problem is nobody's ready. And the people that actually believe in this person, they're going to be the first to reject it. It's not a joke. If somebody literally walked up into a church, to a priest, to a Christian, to a Catholic, to a teacher, you can go up to a cop anyway, but every single one of those people would literally call the police because they think this person would be crazy. The world's not ready to even understand the point of it. They're not even prepared to hear potentially a story. Nobody even has a clue how this is going to happen. And again, I've talked to people in the prophecies that he's going to come in the clouds. And I say, where do we, the internet, where do we store our data? And they're like, in the clouds. So imagine the idea of it coming out, it going viral. It's basically coming in the clouds. Imagine the story collapses down to the singular point. And that's basically it. I'm just very curious what would happen. What would actually be the reaction of the world if this guy basically came and by democratic right and by divine right, and basically explaining not just religiously and philosophically, but scientifically through quantum physics and all, connecting all consciousness and the whole spectrum. So the idea that it possibly comes true and nobody's actually ready, it's actually kind of comical besides being kind of terrifying. And at the current state of the world, I guess that would be my question is if he showed up in a certain country or any country and basically professed himself and explained everything, who's actually qualified to listen and to actually deem it true or untrue?